Welcome back to Women Writers in Chinese History. In this lecture, we'll continue to introduce several notable trends regarding women's writing and the literary image of women poets in 7th century China. To review, we have discussed 17th century China as a period that experienced a violent dynastic transition from the Ming Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty in 1644. During the late Ming Dynasty, that is the first half of the 17th century and the previous 16th century, the Jiangnan or Lower Yanzi region experienced rapid economic and cultural developments. Women in the region also began to publish many works of their own and form literary networks as represented by the anthology Classic Poetry of Famous Women compiled by Wang Duanshu. We have also introduced the cult of Qing, or the cult of love, or sentimentality, on the rise in late Ming China. Tang Xianzu's play Peony Pavilion is a famous example of the affirmation of the power of love according to the cult of Qing. Despite the dynasty transition, these trends that emerged from the late Ming period would continue into the Manchu dynasty of Qing. However, in order to govern the Han Chinese population, Manchu rulers adopted a policy to reinforce the conservative values of Neo-Confucian orthodoxy against the more liberal trends as exemplified by the rise of the philosophy of the heart-mind during the late Ming period. In this larger context, women's writing and the literary images of writing women continued late Ming trends in more subdued forms and became a more controversial topic. We'll look at some examples about this controversy in later lectures. Now, to see more examples about trends in women's writing in 17th century China, we'll look at the following cases. First, writings by Buddhist nuns and their religious and social network. Second, we'll briefly look at the case of female literary societies formed by women related by family ties, such as the Banana Garden Poetry Club, Jiaoyuan Shi She. Then, in the next lecture video, we'll look at some widespread stories during the 17th century and the later periods during the Qing Dynasty on the image of the suffering concubine or wife, especially the story of Feng Xiaoqing and that of Shuang Qing, who's supposed to be a peasant woman capable of writing fine poetry. Let's first turn to the writings and religious work of Buddhist nuns, especially those related to the school of Chan Buddhism. In earlier lectures, we have introduced Buddhism as a religious tradition that infused Chinese culture with more egalitarian and fluid notions about gender. In terms of historical development, we mentioned that Buddhism gained popularity during the period of division after the fall of the Han Dynasty and became integrated with China's native philosophies, Confucianism and Taoism. In particular, Buddhism had a strong affinity with Taoism due to their similar emphasis on the impermanent and therefore illusory nature of material forms. In the Chinese tradition, the cross-fertilization of Buddhism and Taoism gave rise to the tradition of Chan Buddhism, which came into being during the period of division and became a dominant form of Buddhism in China in the subsequent periods. Chan Buddhism also influenced Japanese Buddhism and came to be known in the West as Zen. Chan Buddhism is a very complex philosophical and religious system. For our purpose, we should note that Chan Buddhism underscores the radical equivalence of all material forms, especially those conventionally positioned as opposites. According to Chan Buddhist principles, polar opposites or dualities are all fundamentally empty, that is, impermanent and illusory. For the question of gender, this is certainly a very liberating concept. As explained in Red Brush, part of the Chan Buddhist problem with language is that it tended to keep people rooted in duality, existence and non-existence, good and bad, right and wrong, and it is this duality that Chan Buddhists regarded as the root of all human suffering. And perhaps one of the most important of such duality is, of course, that between male and female. And here too the Chan Buddhists affirmed that the ultimate truth was to be found beyond all dualities, including that of gender. A famous story in the Chan Buddhist tradition that illustrates the fluidity of gender identities is about the daughter of the Dragon King. According to this miracle story included in Lotus Sutra, 妙法莲华经, the daughter of the Dragon King attained immediate and supreme enlightenment when she listened to the Lotus Sutra, and she was then questioned by a disciple of the Buddha's as to how a woman could attain enlightenment and in such an immediate manner. The disciple was referring to an idea being circulated in Buddhism since its early history. That is, women were subjected to the so-called 5 hindrances, 五障, and were unable to become a Buddha or other forms of deity. The Dragon King's daughter replied by immediately turning herself into a man in order to demonstrate that her spiritual insights gave her the ability to determine her gender and to transcend both gender categories as man or woman. Chan Buddhism's principle of gender fluidity can be seen in the writings or speeches by nuns. One distinctive type of writing in the Chan Buddhist tradition is gong'an, or koan in Japanese, which is primarily about witty and enigmatic exchange between Chan masters and their interlocutors. Here is a conversation recorded as a gong'an between Mo Shan Liaoran, a famous woman Chan master of the late Tang Dynasty, and a monk named Guan Xi Zhixian. Apparently, this monk barged in Mo Shan's temple in a boisterous manner, challenging her to a Chan debate, or else he would wreck her meditation chamber. Mo Shan, the nun's title, means the summit mountain, and the Chan debate between she and the monk hinged on the definition of her identity as the master of Summit Mountain. As the text goes, he asked, "What is the owner of Summit Mountain like?" She replied, "It does not have male or female appearance." He then gave a shout and asked, "Why doesn't it transform itself?" She replied, "It is not a god and it is not a ghost. What should it transform itself into?" With this, he admitted defeat and worked as a gardener in her temple for 3 years. Like other gong'an writings, this whole exchange is enigmatically terse. Yet it's clear Mo Shan Liaoran positioned herself as someone transcending gender, just like the mountain she named herself after. Judging by the monk's willingness to serve in her garden for 3 years, he got it and was more than convinced. For another early example, let's look at a sermon by Miao Dao, who lived during the Song Dynasty during the early 12th century. Miao Dao was from an upper-class scholarly family and became a female disciple of the famous Chan master Da Hui Zonggao. Da Hui Zonggao legitimized women's participation in Chan Buddhism and had several famous female disciples who became renowned Chan masters, such as Miao Dao. Miao Dao was also known as the great teacher radiance of concentrated meditation, Dingguang Dashi. In this sermon, she elegantly affirmed the Chan principle of transcending the limits of all concepts and of seeking the truth on your own without relying on external authorities, even the Buddha. In her words, Chan is not a matter of concepts and thoughts. To set up concepts is to deviate from the teaching. As for speaking of great merit, to establish merit is to miss the point. Listen to the phrases beyond the pure sounds, and do not seek to apprehend the truth in concept. Turn the receiving and responding power of the teacher round, and get it into your own hands. Grab the cudgel and tongs away from the Buddhas and Chan masters, and control them yourselves. During the Ming and the Qing dynasties, female Chan masters continued to emerge and leave behind literary and religious texts. In general, the Buddhist convent provided women with a haven of sort, either when they had few choices in secular life or when they developed a true affinity with Buddhist teachings. As Redbrush reports, as was true in pre-modern Europe, the convent often offered refuge to women who had no other place to go, women whose husbands had died or abandoned them, or who had no families upon whom they could depend. Their motivations were varied. Some indeed were widowed at an early age. Others appear to have felt a strong pull toward a religious life, even as young children. It should be noted that most nuns were illiterate in traditional China, so the writing nuns we are discussing here were the few women from scholarly families and had received a classical education when they were young. Furthermore, besides writing, women could apply their various talents to the convent life in ways that were impossible in the secular world. In words from Redbrush, for these women, the convent was not simply a place to hide away. Rather, it was a place where they could exercise many of their talents, religious, administrative, educational, and literary, to an extent that may have been impossible in the inner quarters. During the Ming and Qing dynasties, a notable trend is that Chan Buddhist nuns formed religious networks of their own and lived in their own convents, and the younger nuns could begin the religious career under the guidance of female rather than male masters. One important source of Buddhist nuns of the late Ming period is Jiaxing Extended Tripitaka, Jiaxing Xuzang Jing, a collection of sermons, letters, poems, and autobiographical accounts by or about Chan Buddhist women in the Jiaxing area, which is located in the Jiangnan or Lower Yanzi region. There we can find records about Zhiyuan Xinggang, the abbess of the Crouching Lion Chan Cloister, Fushi Chanyuan. Zhiyuan Xinggang was devoted to Buddhism since an early age, but her family married her off to a scholar. However, her husband died early, and after the passing of both her parents in her 30s, she became a nun and studied with a male Chan master. Later, in her 50s, she was invited by a local gentry to be the abbess of a newly founded convent, that is the Crouching Lion Chan Cloister. Under her leadership, the convent became well known in the Jiaxing area and was well respected by many gentry families. Zhiyuan Xinggang also had several talented female disciples. Two of them, Yigong Chaoke and Yikui Chaoshen, became the new abbesses of the convent after their master's death. Jiaxing Extended Tripitaka, the book we mentioned earlier, contains an autobiographical account written by Yikui Chaoshen on how she became the abbess of the convent and her work as the abbess. According to Yikui Chaoshen's autobiography, she became a Buddhist at the age of 26. She didn't explain the circumstances, only saying that she left the household wife and took the tonsure, and we wondered if her husband had passed away by that point. Yikui Chaoshen entered the Crouching Lion Chan Cloister and studied with Zhiyuan Xinggang After the death of her master, another disciple, Yi Gong Chaoke, became the new abbess, and then Yi Kui Chaoshen lived by herself in a thatched hermitage, which was built with the help of one of her male relatives. 6 years later, Yi Gong Chaoke, the new abbess, fell seriously ill and hoped to entrust the convent to Yi Kui Chaoshen's management. Initially, Yi Kui Chaoshen hesitated because she needed to care for her aging father. However, her father passed away the following year, and she finally took on the duty. Her first mission as the new abbess was to relocate her master's stupa from a deserted roadside to a more proper site within the temple. Stupa is called ta in Chinese. The Chinese style of stupa is popularly known in English as the pagoda. In the Buddhist context, the stupa is a tomb to enshrine the remains and relics of Buddhist masters. This relocation work took Yi Gong Chaoke 6 years. Later, working with local lay donors, some of whom, if not many, were gentry women, Yi Chen Chaoke constructed more buildings for the convent, including a main hall. Impressively, Yi Gong Chaoke completed all these construction projects during the chaotic years of the Manchu conquest period. A sermon she gave to her disciples, as reported by her autobiography, may best sum up her dedication to this convent work. I have spent 26 years toiling for this Dharma family, 10 years of which have been devoted to the task of building, as gradually this cloister has come into being. All of this has come from the trusting hearts of donors from all 10 directions. It is for this reason that night and day I exhort and admonish you, my disciples. If we do not disregard our bodily desires and make our minds as if dead to the world, how will we be able to ensure that this cloister will continue for a long time without falling into decay? If you want to repay your Dharma ancestors, you must respectfully adhere to the pure regulations and sincerely fulfill your vows. In this way, the simple and austere family style will last forever. Only by following these words will be able to live together as a community and ensure that it be sustained for generation after generation. You must not betray that which has been the primary aspiration of my entire life. Clearly, the convent is a greater family for Yi Kui Chaochen and her disciples outside their own households, and there Yi Kui Chaochen applied her talents and visions as a fundraiser, an architect, an entrepreneur, and a religious leader in ways impossible for women in the society at large. Yi Kui Chaochen was also a fine poet. Only a handful of her poems were preserved today. These poems include one addressed to her late master, who was like a second mother to her. As the first poem goes, she who spent years humbling, shaping, and polishing us is now gone like a broken noon dream, and I'm still in tears. Alas, it was far too soon for me to have been parted from her. Her personal things are now in ashes, and know not sorrow. 折心磨琢几春秋，午梦惊残泪未收。叹息离诗何太早，家思荡尽不知愁。 Here, by stating that things know not sorrow, Yi Kui Chaochen implies that as a human, she knows too much sorrow, even as a cultivated nun. In the second poem of the set, she thus states, Since when have spring and fall passed without me serving her? The cries of the nightjars fill the branches left bare of blossoms. Broken-hearted, I sorrowfully listen to their repeated calls, then just shut the brushwood gate against the wind and rain. 几见青黄不识诗，子规啼遍落花枝。伤心愁听三回唤，尽掩柴扉风雨时。The nightjar here is called 子规 or 杜鹃鸟 in Chinese. In Chinese poetry, 子规 is the bird representing grief and lament due to its sorrowful sound. In another poem, she laments the passing of Yi Gong, the disciple who took charge of the convent before her. Waking from my dream, full of sorrow, I listened to the morning bell. No point in strumming tears of blood dye the red maples. I think back on how together we sang the songs of the unborn. How could I have known the wind would blow in a different tune? 梦觉寒悲听晓钟，空谈血泪染丹枫。追思共唱无声曲，何意风吹别调中。As you might have noticed if you understand the Chinese titles of the poems, Yi Kui Chaozhen used male terms to refer to her master and Yi Gong, calling her master an old and venerable monk, 老和尚, and Yi Gong as her older brother, 兄. As Redbrush explains, Buddhist nuns refer to their teachers, fellow students, and disciples by male kinship terms, grandfathers, brothers, sons, and grandsons, even when they were in fact female. We can clearly see this pattern in another poem by Yi Kui Chaozhen written on the occasion of a nun's 50th birthday. Of 100 years, half have disappeared into the distant past. Now you have put the convent in order. Everything goes well. Our grandfathers' fields have been tilled and are ready to harvest. Sons and grandsons will forever find their way to the source. 百年过半自悠然，重整金兰世事变。祖父田园耕四熟，儿孙千古履元渊。By the example of Yi Kui Chaozhen and the other nuns of the Crouching Lion Chan cloister, we can see not only the works of writing nuns, but also the formation of a female religious network, whose members had been building, both literally and symbolically, a lineage and a legacy of their own. You can read about more examples of writing nuns from Redbrush. Now, moving forward, let's briefly talk about family-based female literary societies during the early Qing period. One example is the Banana Garden Poetry Club, 胶原诗社. This literary society was the most active between 1665 and 1675 and was based in the Hangzhou area of the Jiangnan region. It seems that the society initially had 5 to 7 members. Membership in the club was somewhat fluid, but in general involving women related by family ties as sisters, nieces, daughters-in-law. Women in the club wrote both shi and ci poems, and they were often calligraphers and painters. From one brief account by one member of the club, we can get a general picture of their literary activities. Each month, we would meet a number of times, and at each meeting would randomly choose a rhyme and assign topic, and in this way would chant our verses till the end of the day. Moreover, each of us would recommend for membership in the club female relatives such as Chai Jixian, Li Duanming, Qian Yunyi, Gu Qiji. We became as friendly as gold and orchid, and each of us was rich in snow and floss. The collection of our linked verses grew bigger every day. Here, linked verse or 连诗 refers to a traditional literary game of creating a long poem together at a party by responding to each other's lines. Through these activities, women in the club received inspiration and support to carry out their literary endeavors. Red Brush has a chapter devoted to the works of women in the Banana Garden Club, and you can explore these poems on your own. For another example, let's turn to this passage left by Shang Jinglan. Shang Jinglan was a famous woman writer whose husband had drowned himself as a loyalist for the Ming Dynasty. Shang Jinglan chose to stay alive in order to care for her sons and daughter. In this passage, she wrote about how she passed her late years in the literary company of other women, especially her daughters and daughters-in-law. I am a 72-year-old widow who has again and again found herself on the brink of death. Still, all my life I've been fond of the soft brush. The wife of my eldest son, Zhang Dehui, the wife of my second son, Zhu Derong, and my daughters, Xiu Yan and Xiang Jun, all know how to read. Whenever we could take time from our needlework, we would select topics and assign rhymes and earnestly strive for elegance. Sometimes we would delve into history. At other times, we would discuss current affairs. Whenever we met with talented ladies or pure maidens, we would invite them to stay and would not let them depart. The examples of Shang Jinglan's family and the Banana Garden Club exemplify the emergence of family-based female literary societies during early Qing dynasty. Although it is an interesting phenomenon and certainly a positive occurrence for the women involved, these family-based female literary societies operated on a smaller scale in comparison to the more public social circles developed around late Ming women writers such as Wang Duanshu or the Chan Buddhist nuns. In this light, this phenomenon possibly indicates more restrictions on women's participation in public literary life. On this note, let's end this presentation. Please complete the quiz questions and then continue to the next lecture on the tragic image of the young woman poet in writings from the 17th and 18th centuries.